with that, we head to the last session of the day, which is the mega session. And it's with the author, Sarah Gearhart. Sarah, I know you've been here since morning. Before I also came, you were here. So, and she's been waiting and listening to everyone so patiently. So let's begin the last session now. Sarah Gearhart, on her book, We Share the Sun, the incredible journey of Kenya's legendary running coach, Patrick Sang, and the fastest runners on earth. Author Sarah Gearhart has specially flown in from New York to be with us. She's a producer, journalist, and athlete. In her biography of a supercoach, Patrick Sang, she provides a moving account of the inner workings of the world's greatest distance runners. Special guest coming in from Nairobi is Ezekiel Kemboi Cheboi, winner of the 3,000 meters steeplechase at the 2004 Summer Olympics, the 2009 World Championships, the 2011 World Championship, the 2012 Summer Olympics, and the 2013 World Championship, along with 2015 World Championships. Moderating the session is broadcast journalist Shyam Vasudevan, who has worked in organizations such as Sports Stars and ESPN.
Hi folks, good evening. Sarah and I have been through these questions quite a few times now. I want to abandon this for a bit. Actually, no, I'm quite nervous. So this book is lovely. It's a great book that goes in depth into the minds of one of the greatest long and middle distance coaches in the world, Mr. Patrick Sang. Sarah's done some incredible work there, staying there for about, let me say about 2 years, Sarah? You spent there?
I spent collectively 11 months in Kenya. Yeah.
And you really got into the head of Coach Sang. So I want to start right off the bat. What was it that made him so special, and why Patrick Sang?
Why Patrick Sang? Yeah, I mean, there are many talented, interesting running coaches in the world. However, I was really drawn to Coach Sang for a number of reasons. And to be honest, before I started this project, I didn't know who he was, and we actually had no relationship at all. I had never crossed paths with him. I had never met him. But I've been fascinated by East African running culture for years, and I've profiled some of the most prominent runners in the country. And in 2017, I was able to go behind the scenes at the Boston Marathon and profile the #1 entrant in the field, Emmanuel Mutai, who was the 4th fastest marathoner in history. And it was after I wrote that story, I had this longing to go to Kenya because I wanted to explore and understand the running culture for myself. You know, it's one thing to read about it in a magazine story or in a book, but that's through someone else's lens. And so I just wanted to know from my perspective. So what happened was in spring 2020, this was during the pandemic, a literary agent reached out to me about a story I wrote for Runner's World about ultra trail running. And he wanted me to consider turning that into a book. And I said, at the time, I'm not really interested, but I have other ideas. And my idea was really to write a book about East African running culture. And as I basically thought about the idea, I considered, well, who is behind the talent? Who is behind producing some of these top runners? And that's how I came to Patrick Sang. And he actually tends to shy away from the media. He keeps a really low profile because that's just the nature of his personality. So I couldn't find much information about him, to be honest, other than the fact that he went to the University of Texas in the 80s. He was recruited all the way from Kenya, which is quite rare. He graduated early with a degree in economics and geography and went on to earn a master's in city planning, all the while coaching himself through 2 Olympics, including earning a silver medal in Barcelona, and he helped Kenya sweep the podium for the first time. So I had like these facts, and I just knew I needed to know more. And
you chased him down?
I chased him down for months. And we actually have a mutual contact, and I reached out to the contact, and I was begging him to connect me to Coach Sang, basically, and he prefaced with, I don't know if he'll be open to this idea, I have to tell you, because he is a really private person, but I'll at least connect you, and you can share your idea. And he did that, and I basically had to present my idea, and we went back and forth for months, and we had a lot of conversations on the phone that would be upwards of an hour talking about all things, ironically, but running. So we would talk about politics, we would talk about world affairs, education, all of that. And I knew pretty early that he would be a really good conversationalist. And if someone's a good conversationalist, they'll be a good subject.
Funny thing about Sarah is, I think in the book it says she's run 16 marathons. She's run 4 more since then. That means you've run 20 now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, it says 14. So this was published in April 2023, and I've run 6 more since then, which sounds kind of crazy, but 5 of them were this year.
And you did 4 marathons in 4 days, right?
Yeah. So in April.
4 marathons in 4 days.
Yeah. In April, I was part of a special project, and I did my first ultra endurance challenge in Namibia. So I ran in the Kalahari and Namib Desert, which was really crazy. Yeah, it was an amazing experience, though.
And Sarah, I think you really got into the head of Coach Sung. You got to understand his coaching philosophy, which is more than just the track. It sort of translates into life. I think the 3 fundamentals are high moral standards, modesty, and common sense.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. I think even Kipchoge refers to him as a life coach and not just a track coach.
Yeah, definitely. So the way that Coach Sang approaches the sport, I think, is really different from other coaches. He has a really holistic approach, and he focuses on this core question of, if you take athletics out of the human being, what is left? And I think that is an interesting way to develop an athlete. It's looking at not how you perform on the track or on the road, it's how you perform in the world. And, I think too often we view sport as very narrow and kind of one-dimensional. He actually said in a story I read that was published by World Athletics, is the last thing that you want is to develop a superstar athlete who is out of touch with society. And this is one of the reasons why he really focuses on education. So he actually won't coach anybody who hasn't finished high school. And one of the reasons for that is, education is held in such high regard. It's something that he views as necessary for developing interpersonal skills, communication, social skills, which ultimately develop your character. And he says character really it's everything.
You mentioned a superstar athlete, and I'm sitting next to steeplechase royalty right here. 2 Olympic gold medals,
Yes.
4 World Championship gold medals. He's got just 1 bronze in his entire career. I mean, come on. Come on. Whew, man. Feel my hand shaking? Mr. Kemboi,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what makes Kenyan runners so special. Sarah mentioned in terms of how the philosophy works. It's that, and the book's title, of course, says, We Share the Sun. What makes you so special? What is this obsession that Kenyan runners have with the steeplechase? We just can't seem to beat you at it.
I think, first of all, our geography in Kenya, the landscape is so nice for middle and long distance, especially steeplechase, because in Kenya, when I used to be young, we were hearing about steeplechase guys being a Kenyan tradition, but now it has gone to Ethiopia and USA. Naturally, I think it was something long ago for Kenya, but now it's changed. Yeah, because now we also have one Indian guy, the young guy, is good. One time, he'll be an Olympic champion. Trust me. Yeah.
But if you could sort of just break it down as to what makes Kenyan runners so special, is it because sort of there's so many of you that are so good in such a small time frame that you push each other to the limit that actually brings out the best in each of you?
Yeah, I think steeplechase is the most easiest event in the world compared to marathon. It's about the technique, jumping the barriers, and running the flat course and the water. So that one.
That doesn't sound very easy, Kemboi.
It is for me. Yeah, it's for me. So I think in Kenya, everybody wants to be a steeplechaser. That's why it has been a tradition. Even if you meet some young children, they want to be steeplechasers like the former one. So that's one key is giving us going. Yeah.
And Sarah, could you sort of going back to when you sort of got to meet Coach Patrick for the first time, you went to Kaptigat, you saw the facilities there. You know, it's a very different scenario from the US, which is now sort of the holy grail for athletics. We've got your underwater treadmills, anti-gravity treadmills, indoor training tracks, swimming pools. You've got the world's greatest facilities there. But back home in Capricorn, it's much different. You've got a track, you've got a field, you've got a run.
Yeah.
What brings out sort of these champion and world beaters from such simple sort of surroundings?
Yeah, yeah. Has anyone here ever been to Kenya? Yeah, have you been to the Rift Valley? Okay, so you have an understanding. So the Rift Valley it's really unique, and where Eliud Kipchoge trains, it's in an area called Kaptagat, which is a really small village that's about 2,400, 2,500 meters altitude, which is quite high. And there is nothing to do besides run and sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically farmland, and it's really lush and green with long rolling hills, and it's a huge playground for a distance runner. And the camp is quite secluded, and it's basically Locals and this camp that is located kind of off the road down a long driveway. And the way that it's set up, you almost think that you're going into what seems like a retreat, because it's full of fruit trees, and it's really quiet, it's really peaceful, but it is quite bare. So the building is one dormitory for men and then one for the few women that are part of the camp, which is like 5. And it was originally built for developing athletes. It wasn't meant to be this elite facility, what it has become, but it's quite basic and what we would consider humble and quite modest. So they don't, in fact, have a gym. So for strength training, they actually pull yoga mats onto the lawn with some weights, and they just exercise. They just exercise in the lawn, and sometimes they'll commute 40 minutes away to go to the gym if they want to use a proper weight room. But they make it work, and actually the way that the camp operates, the athletes maintain the space. So they do all the cleaning, they maintain the food budget, and even someone like Eliud Kipchoge will mop the floors.
Wait, say that again?
Someone like Eliud Kipchoge will mop the floors after running 40K. It's just like that. It's very cohesive, and there's a lot of synergy there. And in the book, I describe it as like an energy vortex. It's a really unique feeling. But they have proven time and again that the way that they operate, it seems to work. And I find that in the West, particularly in the US and Europe, we tend to overcomplicate our training. We want to have the latest tech gadgets. We want to have the latest carbon shoes and the apparel. We need to have all these fancy things, but there it's really stripped down, and it's quite basic, and they show the purity of the sport. Yeah, at the end of the day, you just need running shoes, and even in Kenya, there are many runners that run without shoes. So yeah, there's a simplicity and purity there that I don't really see other places, and I find it really lovely, and I think that is a contributor to their success.
I think, Sarah, one recurring theme in the book is the word why. There's one sort of excerpt that I picked up, which is the why is crucial. The why pushes one to be better every day. You've clearly laid a lot of emphasis on the why, and I've just got one question: why?
Yeah, the why. The why is really understanding your purpose. It's really your driving force, like what gets you up in the morning and what makes you do what you're doing. And I think oftentimes we're not always totally clear on our why. So in order to be a successful athlete, you have to understand your direction. So that is what I mean by the why. Yeah.
And Kemboi, what was your why? What was your purpose that got you to become one of the greatest ever to race the track?
I wanted always to be the best in the world. That one gave me morale, support, because I always wanted to win everything. Yeah, I wanted to win everything in the world, and I did that. I wanted to be Olympic champion, world champion, commonwealth champion, African champion, Kenyan champion, and I achieved.
I think you said champion like 12 times in that sentence.
Yeah, that one proved to me right that everything is possible. So long as you trust yourself, believe in yourself, everything is possible. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's anything you could have done more, considering you're a champion, world champion, champion. But at some point, obviously you've grown up at the same time as Kipchoge. You guys were around the same age group. He had a chance to train Patrick through his career. you trained with Coach Patrick as well, I think in your early days. Do you feel at some point maybe you could have had a chance to work with Patrick, or maybe things would have been different?
My coach is Moses Kiptanui. He's a former steeplechase. And the coach of Eliud Kipchoge is Patrick Sang, former steeplechase. So both of the coaches, we are from the same town, Eldoret. We are in the same neighborhood. It's called Elgon View. I've been with Eliud since throughout national team, since 2001, 2002, 2003 in Paris, 2004 Olympics, 2005 Berlin, 2006 until 2016 in Rio Olympics. So we've been with Eliud. We are good friends, and also Coach Patrick, we are good friends. Yeah, sometimes I consult him about some things in athletics. Yeah. Yes.
So that kind of brings me back to the next point, which is, I think Coach Sang's philosophy is more than just running, right? We touched about this a little earlier, but sort of delve deeper into that. It's sort of, he wants to make you a holistic human being. It's very holistic the way he approaches coaching, and I think education is an absolute must in his camp, right? So you kind of think that that is probably what gets out the best of these runners, because they have the discipline that they can't just run, but they've got to study to back themselves up. Because there's an excerpt where I remember a young runner had come to coach and he said, no, if you haven't finished your education, you can't join me. Because what about life after your track career? What if this doesn't work out? What if you fail? Then what? Does that sort of inculcate a deeper sense of responsibility and dedication in the athletes?
Yeah, so I think it was a few years ago, management approached Coach Sang with 2 high school boys who wanted to be part of the camp, but he told them no, despite the fact that they had a lot of talent. He told them, go back to school first and then come back to me. And he said, that's just being responsible. But in terms of education, yeah, I mean, he asks his athletes, what are you going to do if running doesn't work out? But, athletes have such a narrow window to succeed that they have to have a backup plan. And he views education as being really foundational. And just to give you an example of creating a holistic athlete, we can look at someone like Eliud Kipchoge, who has his foundation, the Eliud Kipchoge Foundation, which focuses on 2 pillars, which is education and the environment. So running has very much influenced him to want to give back to society, his why. So with his foundation, his goal is to develop libraries all over the country, and then ultimately all over Africa. And in terms of the environmental component, it's to build more trees, indigenous trees, all around the country. And, we don't really look at athletes in that way. It's always about what number can you produce, how fast can you run, how long can you run. But there's so much more to an athlete. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, is because I wanted to unveil his approach to coaching is this way. It's developing the human.
Overall sort of development, not just as an athlete, but as a human being as
Right.
well. I think one thing that sort of I took away was Coach Sang saying, set goals and not expectations. And that sort of will drive you closer to where you want to be. Because if you want to win a medal, you focus on winning the medal, but not the timing that you want to win, perhaps. Do you think that sort of makes him, in some sense, the Socrates of the athletics track and field world, in terms of he always pushed his athletes sort of think deeper, answer tougher questions, and sort of do a lot of introspection before actually, getting to where they were going to get?
Yeah, so I think the language Swahili is quite poetic. I think it's a really beautiful language. And he talks in parables. So you'll walk away from a conversation and you'll have to interpret what he just said. And even in just casual conversations, he'll say really beautiful phrases, like on the topic of worrying. We tend to worry a lot. And he said, life is like water poured on the ground. It naturally finds its course. Things like that, which I think is really beautiful. He just speaks like that. You just want to write things down. But yeah, his idea is to, he wants his athletes to really think for themselves and not be sheep in the world. This is the best way I can put it. Yeah, be leaders, not followers.
And I think, Coach Sang's philosophies worked phenomenally well for Kenyan running, long distance, middle distance runners, steeplechases, of course. Then came about this phenom named Soufiane El Bakkali. 2021, 2024, El Bakkali comes in, ends the domination of Kenyan steeplechase history. How did you see that, Kemboi? Did you sort of see that coming at any point? Did you think that that domination of the steeplechase would ever come to an end?
What I can say is everything is possible. Kenya used to dominate steeplechase, but El Bagali came and Lamecha Kirma from Ethiopia.
Yep.
As you can remember, this year in Olympics in Paris, about 100 meters and 200, there were some changes in 200 about Botswana guy, Teboko. Yeah, nobody knew that he could win from the US and Jamaica.
Yep.
So, to me, as a sports person, everything is possible. Always, there's a new champion. That's what I was saying initially. I told you about the young Indian, steeplechaser. One day, one time.
Yep.
Given the good coaching and good environment for training, he can be a champion. So everything is possible. Yes.
And Sarah, was this something that coach used to touch upon in terms of opposition? Because I know he focused a lot on how his athletes could become the best versions of themselves. But did he also sort of hold sessions on the opposition, sort of how to tackle someone like a Bakali, who at that point was threatening to get to that gold medal at the Olympics?
I would say that his advice to every single one of his athletes is to, when you're on the starting line, treat yourself as the best one. That was something that Elliot had relayed to me. Always just don't think about other people. It's think about yourself as the best one.
Yes.
And that worked. It worked wonders.
Yeah, it's going to work, yeah.
Seemed to work.
And was it, I think almost everybody that Coach Patrick Sang had in his academy, in his group, he knew they were destined for success. Was it anybody that he felt perhaps wasn't 100% that he held on to, or was it a very strict sort of entry system where, no, only if I believe that you can get to the podium will I actually have you in my camp?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So was there anybody that he think would not, or rather, did he believe in every single person that he had in his camp, that they would get to the podium? Because there were a couple of instances, I think one athlete unfortunately went into alcoholism, rehabbed, came back, slipped into alcoholism again. How do you sort of handle those scenarios, which are far from ideal for a track coach?
Yeah, so the camp, first of all, it's really difficult to get into, and you're basically, from what I understand, given a year trial. But I did ask him, have you ever had to kick any athletes out? And he said yes. And there was a situation in which an athlete was struggling with alcoholism, and he left the camp, but he decided that he wanted to come back, and he let him in. So, yeah, I mean, there are instances in which if an athlete isn't focused, they don't really belong in the camp, because it's the top camp in the country, and it is quite serious. But he is willing to give someone a second chance because he does see their potential. Yeah.
He was very sort of in that sense, it's okay if you mess up once, you can always come back and give it another go.
Yeah. Maybe not 10 times in a row, but yeah, a second chance for sure.
And Kemboi, is something, again, I'm going to touch upon this again, which, just in terms of, it's a unit, right? The book said we share the sun.
Yes.
Right? It's a unit. All of you back in Kenya, all the runners are together. It's not like, it's not I, it's we. It's ours. The sun is ours. How does that translate to sort of the track world? And do you think that's why Kenyan runners are so successful? Because it's a unit, it's a pack, it's a squad?
Yeah, I think all of us in this world, we share the sun. Everybody we share. The sun that shines here in India, same as in Kenya. It doesn't shine brighter in Kenya, less in India, but same sunshine. So in Kenya, we trust that process that we say the sun, and in Kiswahili we say tunagawa jua. So we share the sun,
Exactly,
yes.
yeah.
So it's up to you to do your best, because same sunshine, same blessings, but what you do matters most. Yeah.
And a round of applause for that. I mean, come on. That gives me goosebumps. And Sarah, was that the reason why you chose this as the title? Did you hear of this phrase when you were during your time in Kenya?
Yeah, so I learned this phrase, tunagawa jua, when I was my first trip to Kenya, and I thought it was so beautiful. I'd never heard it before, so I wrote it down, and I was thinking, like, what do I do with this? And to be honest, I had a totally different title for this book initially that was really boring. It was making champions. So I'm really glad that I changed it because that's really vanilla. But the title is not meant to be so literal. It's actually esoteric. And what I mean by we share the sun, it relates to this concept of Ubuntu, if you're familiar with that, which is the idea of humanity, of purpose, interconnectedness, focusing on core principles of respect and compassion and solidarity. And these are all things that I witnessed at the camp as well as the running culture in Kenya. So I thought it was an appropriate title.
Can applause, please? Yes. And Kemboi, where do you see this running phenomenon going forward? Looking at the next 10 to 12 years, where do you see Kenya in terms of the steeplechase division, in terms of long distance, middle distance? Where do you see them sort of breaking new barriers? Or are there new barriers to be broken?
Yeah, I think going forward now in sports, a lot of science has developed. During our time, we never had, like now there's the shoe technology. Everybody knows about the new shoe that gives at least some advantage. During our time, we used the other shoes, but nowadays the shoe is the best. And also the light. Now people are running, they have got the light, what's it called? The one that's guiding, when you wear the black, they've got the light, you know?
The light.
Yeah, the lighting system nowadays. Yeah, it gives you, when you are slower or faster.
Oh, right.
Yes, yes. So everything nowadays is about science.
Right.
Also about air intake, they've got technology to test your whatever.
You talk accessibility,
Yeah,
a lot of science there, a lot of
science,
science.
but during our time it was natural,
Just
pure
run.
natural, yeah. So I think going forward, some records will be broken. Yeah, with the science, everything is possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing that fascinates, I think, all of us who watch a steeplechase, any middle distance, long distance running event, is the kick.
Yes.
The last 30 meters, the lactic acid's building up.
Yeah.
You just want to be done, get to your bed, grab a nap, get some food into your body. How do you pull along in those last 30 meters? And what does it take to pull every single kilogram that you weigh across that finish line?
During my training, I used to, specifically, I had like 3 mentalities. One is endurance, the second one was speed, and the third one was technique. Because I had a different technique on jumping the barriers. Because I remember most of the athletes, I could leave them at the waters and sprint fast. So I had a different way of attacking the barriers.
Superb. And I think you make it sound so easy, Kemboi, honestly.
Yeah, it was very easy for me. Yeah.
That's Kemboi for you. Sarah, I want to wrap this up by asking you, you're an avid marathoner. You've run a lot of marathons. Are we going to see you at the Olympics someday?
As a spectator or a reporter?
Both.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Superb. That was our session, guys. Thank you so much for listening in. Throwing the floor. I am going to throw the floor open for questions now.
Yes, can we have the question from you?
Okay, I'm going to first go to Mr. Shah Rukh Khan here. He's our national record holder in the juniors. He's also a SAF gold medalist and a Asian Championship silver medalist, juniors. So, Shah Rukh, over to you.
Go ahead.
सर मेरा सवाल है तो जैसे वर्कआउट करते हैं वर्कआउट में बीच में ही बॉडी एकदम भर जाती है उसके बाद लगता है नहीं पूरा हो पाएगा तो ऐसा क्या करें कि मेरा वर्कआउट और अच्छा हो इम्प्रूवमेंट और आए आगे के लिए
So he's essentially saying that when he works hard, he gets tired midway and he feels quite exhausted. So he wants to know how can he extend his workout sessions to make sure he gets the best out of them.
I think it talks about endurance. It depends where you train. To me, weather in Africa is good, Ethiopia or Kenya, but New Delhi, no. Because the weather here is not friendly to me.
सर इंडिया
So about what you said, you get tired. I think you need to take a lot of intake of training capacity building, that's endurance, and then the speed is possible. My request to you and your coach, you can visit Africa for like 1 month, altitude training, yeah, for you to get more oxygen and for your boat to adapt. You'll not get tired, you'll be the best.
I think आपको अभी वीजा ऑफिस जाना चाहिए, जल्दी से वीजा अप्लाई कर लो.
ठीक है सर.
You will coach him, right, if he comes to Kenya?
Yeah, now I'm starting in Kenya to be a coach. If you will come to Kenya, I'll be so grateful, because when you come to stay with Kemboi, when you go to competition, you win, you will say the news that I was with Kemboi and I'll be the happiest man on that.
Well, that's very sweet of him. I've been observing him that he's been with everyone here, talking to everyone, and then taking selfies and inviting everyone to Kenya. So, any book that we can see written by yourself of giving the recipe of how to be happy and humble? I mean, he's the 2-time Olympic gold medalist and so many laurels to your name. Any secret recipe to that, Mr. Kemboi?
Yeah, right now, what I've started in Kenya, I have some athletes, almost 30 to 40 athletes, but specifically steeplechase. So I'll be happy if you talk to your coach and your federation to come to Kenya. We will support you.
That is great. Round of applause, guys. Right there. Let's go. Yeah.
I think Jonathan wants to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Can I ask Sarah? You mentioned the Rift Valley. I've always been fascinated by one aspect of the Rift Valley. To the eastern side, with Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, you have all the long distance runners, and to the other side, you have, like, say, you have Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Ghana, where they're all 400 and less, like sprinters. I mean, you spend a lot of time. I mean, I've met a few people who, one of the first guys to get to Africa, Kim McDonald, Rupi might have spoken to. He was a great friend of ours. So is there anything that you noticed on to the east and the west side of the Rift Valley? That's what I want to ask you, and I'll ask him something else.
In terms of it being ideal
The
for...
distance runners and the sprinters.
I didn't really meet any sprinters because Kenya...
No, yeah, you'd be on the other side, on
Yeah.
the eastern side.
Yeah. Well, I can't really speak to that a whole lot because I didn't really encounter many sprinters in Kenya. I think they train more south around Nairobi. But I think sprinters in general, they don't really train at altitude much. And the Rift Valley is more for endurance. So actually, triathletes and ultra runners will go there as well. So I think that's really the biggest difference is it being 2,400 meters above sea level. And that's really powerful for endurance.
Ezekiel,
Yes.
I think, again, in this room, Rupinder and I would probably be the only people who saw your coach run in '92 in Barcelona.
Thank you.
I think he got a silver medal behind Matthew Binney.
Yes.
I think Matthew Binney was the winner there. A lot of Kenyan athletes have actually been lured by the Middle East, by Qatar, by Bahrain, you know, all these, even not exactly the Saudis, but the UAE. I mean, with a lot of money, with a lot of riches, with a lot of rewards. Why did you stay on in Kenya? I mean, you know, these guys made tons of money. I mean, you had to run. You had to go to New York to run. You had to go to Europe to run to make money. And you could have just simply taken a flight and made a lot of money.
Yes, that's a good question. I can answer the first question about altitude. Me personally, I'm from Rift Valley. Rift Valley is with a very good geography. Landscape is very nice for this long distance. And some parts of Uganda, where Cheptegei and Kiblimo, that lies same line of Rift Valley. It's an island. Also to Ethiopia, southern part of Ethiopia, they are near Turkana, Kenya. That's most of that is from. And Tanzania. About citizenship, I remember 2003, the Qatari came to Kenya. Most of my friends went to Qatar and Bahrain. They approached me personally. They were paying some huge money. Some guys who went there with some guys, yeah. I know most of them, like Shaheen. Yeah, he was number 1 in Paris. I was number 2. He was, by then he was paid around $2 million. He came also to me, same amount. But I said, me as Kemboi, I'll never change my name. I want to be a Kenyan. I'm a patriot. So, because about money, money is nothing. It's good to be yourself. That's why I said I want to be Kemboi. I ran for Kenya. Whether Kenya based me or not, I remain a Kenyan. So, what I want to tell you, always be a patriot of your country. Never be swayed by some things. Be loyal to your country.
And that's why you're wearing the Kenyan colors today as well.
Yeah. Also, to add on that, after that, I was enrolled in Kenya Police. Because when I ran Paris, I joined the Kenya Police, and also 2004. And the president by then was Mwai Kibaki. I was the only Kenyan in Athens Olympics. I won the only medal, called medalist. And the president called me himself and told me, what promotion do you need in the police? And I told him, and he promoted me on the airport arrival. So now in Kenya, I'm, I think number 3 in the National Service of Police. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, Kipkeino, yeah. I was young when he was still in the police. And I was lucky to be at this center, Eldoret High Performance Training Center, Kipkeino. I stayed scholarship of IAAF, IOC for years. Yeah, so I'm so lucky. Thank you.
Kip came to India as a national coach. He was here with us.
He was here for many years.
Sunday races from the National Stadium to the Rashtrapati Bhavan and back.
Oh, thank you.
Questions?
Yes.
And received him at the airport. He used to be my coach.
All right, Mr. Ezekiel here. You did it once, you could have been happy. You did it again, you could have stopped. You did it thrice, you could have been satisfied. You kept going. What was it that pushed you to keep going again and again, even when you had achieved all that you had?
I think what I wanted most was always to be the best. When I first won, I just to win, and to win, and to win. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you still winning?
No, I'm resting.
Hi everyone, my question is to Ms. Sarah. So do you think in a country like USA that Patrick Sang's philosophy will work?
I would love to see that happen, but the US is definitely hyper individualistic. And I think the way that it works in Kenya, the reason why it works is because this cohesion is really cultural. It's ingrained, it's tradition. You know, Kenya is a country with more than 40 different ethnic groups and tribes, and it is very communal in that regard. The US is not so communal, but I would love to see that happen in some way, but I think it would be really difficult because it's a matter of a cultural difference.
It was once tried by Alberto Salazar in Colorado Springs, and a huge number of people, including Mo Farah, landed up there to try and create a kind of alternative to the Kenyan system.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Alberto Salazar?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone's heard of him. So I think that in general, I'll give you an example. So on the brand, the Swiss brand On, they have a team On Athletic Club in Denver, Colorado, and the athletes, they train together, but they don't live together. So I think that's really the difference. Is there is always some kind of individualistic approach. So it's one thing to have a team that trains together, but not so much the synergy is what you might experience in Kenya.
Unlike Kipchoge, they don't get to mop the floors there.
What's that?
They don't get to mop the floors like Kipchoge does.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, definitely.
But you seem to have produced the same kind of athletes in sprints, for example. The Jackie Joyner Kerseys, the Bob Kerseys, now the Sidney McLaughlins, and the list goes on and on. So you all are doing a good job in the US. courtesy the collegiate system, which is equally impressive as compared to what Kenya has done in the long distance.
Yeah.
And you compete with China, which is determined to upset everyone in the world.
Shireen, you have questions?
Hi, Sarah. My question is away from sports. It's about your process of writing, and also, what's your favorite sports book?
Yeah. My favorite sports book is Open by Andre Agassi, which is so phenomenal. I've read it multiple times. And my writing process, so I wrote a proposal. It was a little over 40 pages, and part of the proposal is you're pre-writing some of the chapters. So I had a really detailed outline, and it was a matter of filling it out. But you know, writing a book is a really hard experience. To produce it, it's usually a 3-year process, or it was a 3-year process for me. And I found it really isolating. But my process was basically, I would sometimes get up at 4:30 in the morning to drive to Kaptagat and observe a training session, take a lot of notes, and come back, and I would just write right away. And sometimes I gave myself, well, I compare it to like training for a marathon. I took it in doses. So that for me was breaking it down by word count, because I had to write between 65,000 and 75,000 words. So I broke it down incrementally. Okay, like this day I'm gonna write 1,000 words, and I wanna get to this many words by the end of the week, by the end of the month, by the end of the year. So that was really my approach. And yeah, I'll just say it was really isolating. But I did a lot of it while I was in the Rift Valley, and there, like I mentioned before, it's the countryside, and so there's not much else to do. It's really quiet, and you're able to be hyper-focused. Yeah.
Sarah, in the session before this, Jonathan Selvaraj, who co-wrote the book on wrestling, made a point about the fact that he had to really, even though he'd been covering the sport for a long time, he had to really understand what the terms in wrestling were, or what the wrestler goes through. Now, as I understand, you're an athlete yourself, you love running. How much did that help you in understanding Patrick Sang's mind and the mind of some of the runners that you met?
Yeah, definitely. That was everything. I don't think I could have written this book if I wasn't a runner. I've been running for 2 decades, and I've run 20 marathons, so I think that knowledge and that feeling, I have to understand the sport in order to really write about it. And I think that, because I am a runner, I'm able to write in a way that I think I wouldn't be able to if I didn't understand the sport. And yeah.
Sure. Oh,
It
can I
helps.
ask one last question? If there's time,
ahead.
can I ask one last question? Sarah, when you are writing about someone like Sang, who's heralded, who's on a pedestal everywhere, and you're writing about his achievements, and you're writing about him as a person, right? Do you do a lot of research? Do you do a lot of talking to others about him, or is it a lot more about your own impressions of the man? And how would you, let's say, in 2 sentences, describe him?
In 2 sentences?
I know it took an entire book.
Yeah.
But
Well, like I mentioned before, before I met him in person, we actually had a lot of phone conversations that were upwards of an hour, talking about a lot of things other than running, ironically. And when I met him in person, our first sit-down interview was 4 hours. So, you know, he's someone who can really talk about everything and anything, even his portfolio. Yeah. I went to the village that he grew up in, which is Kapsisiwa in Kapsabet. Yeah. And I met with Eliud Kipchoge's uncle, and I met with, he and Eliud actually share a really interesting lineage. They're both Nandi, they're both Kalenjin, and under that they're part of a clan. It's called the Talai clan. And they were neighbors growing up, and Eliud's mother was Coach Sang's teacher. So I actually, and for the book, I talked to some people that really knew him growing up in the village, as well as Coach Sang's college coach, who recruited him all the way from Kenya, and that was actually pretty special because his name is Coach Blackwood. I get the impression that he was like a father figure for him. And I talk about this in the book. Coach Sang is the product of, he's the son of, his mother was a second wife to his father. And so his father died when he was pretty young and he didn't really know him. And so his college coach really became like a father figure. There are certainly a lot of people who were influenced by Sang, or Sang was influenced by, that I had to talk to in order to better understand him.
Thank you.
Oh, and to summarize, I didn't add that. To summarize, I would describe him as very serious, humble, considerate, and really, really funny.
Yeah, that was 2 sentences. Perfect. After 75,000 words, you got 2 sentences in.
Any more questions?
Yeah, one last question. So I just wanted to ask you, and I think you answered a bit of it when you talked about the fact that you were a runner and therefore you were able to write so expressively about running. What's your next project going to be, and is it going to be something related to running or a sport that you are not connected with?
Yeah, so I actually want to segue into film, and I would love to produce and co-direct a documentary. Running related would be really lovely, so that's the goal. It's a matter of just getting the right support. I do have an idea about pursuing a documentary about gender-based violence in the women's running community in Kenya, because that's really prevalent, and that's a topic that is really underreported in media. So that is one idea, and then I would also love to do a documentary, a multi-year documentary related to an emerging athlete trying to make an Olympic team. My next big project, though, is I'm on a team for the World Athletics Championships, which are taking place in Tokyo. So I'm on a video producing team, and I will begin doing video interviews with Olympic champions next.
Oh, that's
yeah.
dream.
Thank you.
Do you have an inkling, recently in what gets amongst the female athletes who have done predominantly well, and a lot of them are related to the family? Do you have any idea why this is happening? We had Chebet, then there was a second, third, and a fourth woman who recently died. Do you have any inkling, having spent so much time there,
As it relates to gender-based violence?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, gender-based violence it's not specific to the running community. It's actually a worldwide issue. It's one of the biggest human rights issues in the world. And in Kenya, I think I read a stat that 40% of women are affected. Yeah, which is really crazy. But my understanding is, it's a traditional society, and women can get married at a young age. And in the running community, what happens is, if they do get married at a young age, it's to an older man who will then sort of swoop in and kind of take control of their life, take control of their finances, coach them, etc. So it's, I don't know if you can speak to this too, it's a cultural issue.
It's basically money and land.
Right.
Yeah, and like you rightly said, it's probably prevalent everywhere, but just because 4 athletes, women athletes have done, you
Yeah.
think it's associated with sport,
Yeah.
but it's a much larger problem.
It is, yeah, definitely, and it affects way more than 4 athletes. These athletes they've just been written about in media in a really prominent way, but it affects many, many people who either they don't talk about it because it is pretty taboo still to talk about it, but for this reason, it's why I want to pursue a documentary, because it's a really important topic that, again, is underexposed in media. So I hope I get the support to do that.
Jonathan, you wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, one for Ezekiel and one for Sarah. Ezekiel, what is how difficult is it to make the Indian national team? What's the kind of pressure that you go through just trying to make the team?
I think in Kenya, to be in the national team, you must be the best, because in our national trials, we could be having around 18 top athletes already qualified, and they need only 3. So you have to be the best. You trust yourself. Because most of athletes, they prepare for those championships. So you have to be the best, and you have to trust yourself. Yes. It's the most hardest thing in Kenya to be in the team. Not like in India where you have one athlete in an event. Yeah.
I just want you to point that out.
What?
You know all the Indian athletes, all the best.
Yeah.
Second question, Mr. Sarah, when you were writing about running in Kenya, did you notice that there's predominantly certain tribes or certain communities that do running? Kenya has a lot of communities, like the Asian community as well. Do any of them go into running? Or is there a reason why they don't get into it?
Yeah, the predominant tribe that is really successful in endurance running is Kalenjin. But there have been some one-offs from Maasai. David Rudisha is a really good example of that. Yeah. David Rudisha is Maasai. Yeah, he's Maasai. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it's predominantly Kalenjin, which is in the Rift Valley. Yeah.
But is it so isolated that other part of Kenya is not influenced by what's
Rift Valley. The Kikuyu are Rift Valley. Yeah, and the Kisses, where Morai comes from, Rift Valley. Same line, near the equator. Yeah.
We'll take this one last question from Anisha you wanted to ask. We're sending the mic to you.
Thank you very much. Great session, by the way, Sham, Ezekiel, and Sarah. Sarah, given you juggle so many hats, how much do your writing choices inform your creative choices as a producer when you are trying to tell a story through pixels? And you spoke of your aspirations of making a women's sports documentary. Is it a great time to be making women's sports documentaries in specific? If so, any favorites that you would want to mention?
Well, people talk about women's sports having a moment. It's, well, at least in the US, you know, all kinds of brands and companies are starting to support women's sports in a really big way and investing, and I think that's really great. But, you know, women's sports have been around for quite a while, so it's kind of like, it's about time, right? Your question about what influences my creative choices, well, I think that really stems from wanting to be socially conscious in the type of work that I do. So, you know, I want to take on stories and take on work that has a lot of meaning and could potentially impact the audience and impact the world in a positive way. So I think that when I consider what I want to write about, I consider how is this going to influence people's minds. Yeah, ultimately, that's what I think about.
And what's your favorite women's sports documentary?
My favorite sports documentary.
Women's sports.
Oh,
very
women's
specific.
sports. Well, I can't answer that. I think we need to see more being developed, to be honest, because it's underfunded, underinvestigated, and I think that's a problem.
Well, with that.
I'll give you a good one, Sarah. The battle of sexes. The women will beat the men in marathon one day. Already, the world record in women is better than the Indian marathon men record.
Well, thank you so much, and with that we'll wrap up the session. And thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Mr. Kemboi and Shah, to moderate the session. And now we'll break for 10 minutes. Please go have your tea, and then we'll come back for the most exciting part of the evening, that is the awards. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes. Thank you. A huge round of applause for them, and please, if you could stand together for a photograph.
Just last word. I would like to thank so much Mr. Sandeep and Rubinda for inviting me. They have been always on my phone to be available, and I'm just here. So thank you so much.